They blindsided me between the vending machine and the fridge, just as I was reaching for my second cup of coffee. The COO walked in like she owned the oxygen in the room, flanked by two HR reps who wouldn't meet my eyes. She didn't even try to sugarcoat it. "We're making cuts. Your role is no longer viable." Just like that. No thank you, no handshake, no mention of the 19 years I gave to that building. Security was already waiting outside the break room. I was handed a manila folder and told I had 15 minutes to clear my desk. "My name is Daniel Cross. I'm 51 years old. Until 36 minutes ago, I was Senior Systems Integration Director at Halverson Tech. I started with them fresh out of the Navy, back when we were a dozen engineers in a dusty warehouse piecing together server racks like Lego sets. I helped build the digital backbone that took us global. My fingerprints were on the infrastructure of every major project they launched in the last decade. But today, apparently none of that was viable. They watched me like I might lash out or cry. I did neither. I nodded, calm, quiet. I walked past desks where younger staff kept their heads down. They knew. Or maybe they didn't. Maybe I was just another piece of furniture being wheeled out. At my desk, someone had already placed a cardboard box beside my monitor. I took only what mattered: a framed photo of my daughter from her college graduation, my black moleskin notebook, a small brass paperweight shaped like a compass, and a USB drive I'd quietly formatted the night I felt this was coming. The HR woman tried to speak, something about resources, counseling, transitional services. I ignored her, not out of rudeness, out of focus. I wasn't grieving, I was archiving. When security escorted me to the elevator, the only sound was the dull thud of my boots on tile. No one said goodbye, no one offered a handshake. I could have been invisible, for all the difference it made. In the parking lot, I opened my trunk, set the box inside, and sat behind the wheel for a moment. I didn't start the engine. I didn't drive off in a blaze of fury. I just sat there, breathing. They think they got rid of a liability. They think they checked a box, cut a salary, tightened their belt. What they actually did was fire the man who wrote half the code their cloud suite runs on. The man who manually patched their security system after the Vortex breach, before anyone knew we'd even been targeted. The man who kept a ledger, quietly, precisely, of every corner they cut and every regulation they bent. That notebook in the box, it isn't just filled with quotes and scribbles. It has a full audit trail, time-stamped, cross-referenced, the kind of thing no one noticed because I never bragged, never barked orders, never tried to play the corporate politics game. I just built the bones, let the others decorate the skeleton, and smiled when they took credit. But now I have something else. Time. I watched a young guy walk past my car window, a new hire, probably 2 years in, earbuds jammed in his head, latte in hand. He didn't glance my way. He doesn't know who I am. And soon, he'll be wondering why the back end breaks, why reports stop syncing, why client data flags inconsistencies. Because the systems they relied on were stabilized by someone who didn't write his name in the credits. He wrote it in the margins. And now, I'm gone. I started the car. I didn't go home, not yet. I took the long way, past the data center on East 4th, past the old office we vacated back in 2009 when we outgrew our startup skin. Every building we moved into, I left a trace. Not malware, nothing malicious, just quiet keys, safety valves, my insurance. Halverson forgot something vital in their rush to impress shareholders and trend on LinkedIn. Legacy isn't a weakness, it's a foundation. They traded their cornerstone for a press release, and now they're going to feel the void. I pulled into a quiet lot near the harbor, stepped out, and looked at the water. Wind in my face, salt in the air. I opened the trunk again, took out the moleskin, and flipped to the first page. There, in block letters, I'd written a single phrase months ago, when I first sensed the shift in tone during executive meetings. When they push you out the door, make sure the building misses you. I closed the book, got back in the car, and finally smiled. They thought they boxed me up and escorted me out. But I was never in their box to begin with. The first thing I did when I got home was take off my blazer, hang it neatly, and lock the front door behind me. Not out of paranoia, out of ritual. Control. I poured myself a coffee, black and quiet, then walked into my home office and sat at the same desk where half of Halverson Tech's innovation came to life. They never knew that. They never asked. The room was modest, clean lines, dual monitors. A NAS drive the size of a small briefcase sat humming under the desk, quietly pulsing like a heartbeat. I clicked it on, entered my password, then waited as the archive spun to life. 18 years of backups, code snippets, prototype models, diagnostic tools, all mine, built on weekends, nights, in hotel rooms during business trips while the others drank in the lobby bar. I never signed an exclusivity clause, no IP agreement, no non-compete. They just assumed. Their mistake. I opened a folder labeled Atlas Fork Alpha. It was the kernel that eventually became Halverson's Atlas Integrator Suite, their flagship product. What they didn't know was that the foundation they used came from a stripped-down version I'd written 2 years before Atlas was even pitched. I submitted it under an R&D initiative. The architecture was approved, deployed, and then expanded by teams who layered complexity on a clean spine. But only I knew how the vertebrae held. And now they've cut the spine loose. I checked the public server metrics. Halverson's uptime looked stable for now, but I could already see the early tremors. Error reports were trickling in on 2 of the client dashboards. Nothing major, yet. But the timing was telling. My weekly service scripts, usually uploaded every Friday, weren't there. Their fail-safes were designed to assume maintenance, not absence. It would take weeks for the rot to surface, but once it did, they'd scramble. I took a long sip of coffee and began cataloging what to let die. Atlas Pulse. Let it fail. They wouldn't know how to patch the indexing algorithm when it starts ghost tagging outdated data. Neural Bridge. Keep an eye on it. I might repurpose the middleware. It was always mine to begin with. SimCore Lite. Strip it down. Build a better version from scratch. My own name on the splash screen this time. I spent the next 6 hours in surgical focus, separating what I had created from what they branded. Every folder, every file, cross-referenced against the contracts I'd archived in my personal legal binder. They might have the trademarks, but the source DNA? That was mine. Built in evenings, coded in my own time, tested using personal servers. If they tried to claim it, they'd have to explain why so much of their backend depended on code that didn't exist in any official repository. At one point, I paused to look out the window. The neighborhood was still, suburban calm. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. Wind moved the tree branches like fingers brushing a keyboard. I thought about my daughter, how I used to work on these projects with her, asleep in the next room, her baby monitor on my desk next to my terminal. I wasn't just building systems, I was building options. And now it was time to use them. I opened a clean Git repository and labeled it Aegis. No logos, no mission statement. Just a single line of code, a seed. It would be better than Atlas, lighter, faster, scalable without needing a bloated support team. I wouldn't sell it, not yet. I'd gift it to a few carefully chosen firms, startups I trusted, competitors Halverson had tried to undercut or ignore. Let them wonder how their rivals suddenly found stability overnight. By midnight, I had the first 3 modules working in simulation, clean execution, half the memory usage of Atlas, and no reliance on the legacy patching system they had duct-taped into place years ago. I could see the shape of it already, lean, secure, autonomous. It didn't need Halverson's name. It didn't need mine either, but it would leave fingerprints. I checked the news before shutting down. Nothing public yet. Just a minor update buried in the enterprise feed. Halverson Tech CTO responds to minor system irregularities, calls them expected friction during transition. I laughed, not loudly, just enough to let the tension release through my chest. Friction. They'll call it that until clients start walking, until contracts are lost, until someone asks why the most stable systems in the sector suddenly behave like brittle prototypes. And when that question lands, they'll dig for answers in the wrong places. They'll hire consultants. They'll blame internal miscommunication. Maybe even fire someone new to prove action. But they won't find what they're looking for, because I never left a trail. What they fired wasn't just a man. It was the keystone, the quiet guardian of every duct-taped fix and elegant hack they leaned on. And now, I'm free. Not broken, not bitter, just focused. They'll see the cracks soon. The press might call it unexpected turbulence. Internal emails will flag it as degraded performance. But me, I'll just call it inevitable. They didn't even make it 3 weeks. I saw the first real cracks in Halverson's systems the same way a hunter sees motion in the woods. Subtle, patterned, predictable. It started with a delay in data syncing across client dashboards, then scattered reports of access denials. A few unexpected rollback loops. They labeled it maintenance, but I knew the signs. That was Atlas choking without oxygen. That Friday, I received an encrypted message through an anonymous tech forum where I'd quietly offered consulting under the alias D. Corvus. It was short, precise. We're a fintech group in Atlanta. Our infrastructure's faltering after the last Halverson update. We need stability. I replied within the hour, not because I needed the work, but because I knew who else they'd contracted with before. Halverson had grown too big, too confident. Their client base had diversified across sectors, finance, logistics, healthcare, and now their arrogance was paying dividends. To me. My conditions were simple: non-disclosure, remote-only access, and full system diagnostic permissions. They agreed instantly. The chaos on their end must have been worse than they admitted. Within 2 days, I'd rebuilt their back-end load distribution system from scratch. My version. Lightweight. Resilient. With adaptive redundancies Halverson never implemented because it wasn't cost-effective. I didn't charge premium rates. I didn't want attention. What I wanted was to seed resilience into the market, just not through them. By the following week, I had 5 more inquiries. 3 were from ex-Halverson clients. 1 was a competitor they tried to underbid the year before. The 5th? A firm whose lead architect I'd trained years ago, now desperate to extricate themselves from the failing infrastructure they were sold as enterprise gold. They called it legacy code. I called it my work, strangled by amateurs who never read the footnotes. I worked in silence. No marketing, no website, just referrals passed in low whispers across networks of CTOS who didn't want to admit they were bleeding. My alias was gaining weight. The ghost they'd fired was quietly restoring what they broke. One night, just past midnight, I got another message. This one wasn't encrypted. Subject: you built the backbone, didn't you? There was no signature, just a screenshot. An internal Halverson memo flagged as confidential with lines highlighted in yellow. System failures traced to undocumented legacy dependencies. Unknown origin scripts disabled for risk mitigation. Recommend initiating internal audit of architecture transition. It was real. The formatting, the phrasing, even the initials in the approval footer. I recognized them. I sat back, exhaled slowly, then typed, "Yes," and I never broke it. I just stopped fixing it. The reply came fast. "We're not all idiots here. I'm Mia Langston, Senior DevOps, Halverson Core Ops Team. You don't know me, but I saw what they did, the way they erased you, the lies they told to cover it up. I'm done." Mia told me the COO was unraveling. Department heads were blaming each other. HR launched an internal review, mostly for optics, of course, but it meant something was burning. She said there were daily sync meetings filled with frantic jargon and fake calm. They were bleeding clients but calling it strategic realignment. She didn't ask for money. She didn't ask to collaborate. She just wanted to leak truth into the quiet. Maybe she needed to feel less complicit. Maybe she just wanted someone who'd listen and actually understand the gravity of what was falling apart. I told her to stay smart, stay quiet, and to send me any legacy dependencies they tried to scapegoat. I'd let her know whether they were mine. Most of them were, stripped of credit, strangled in bureaucracy. I logged into Halverson's public client dashboard that night just to watch. Their live uptime ticker blinked with inconsistencies. A regional analytics portal was flagged as under scheduled review. One of their top-tier clients had posted an official support ticket on a public forum, unheard of and desperate. Meanwhile, my consultancy inbox kept filling. Quiet firms, ambitious startups, a few major players who'd never go public with their need, but were willing to sign NDAs if it meant getting things back online. I didn't sabotage anything. I never hacked, never altered, never touched a line of their live code. All I did was stop supporting a house they never maintained. I was their architect. They fired the janitor, kept the scaffolding, and painted over the rot. And now they were surprised when beams started to groan. I kept Mia's emails saved in a secure drive. Not for leverage, just as a reminder of what loyalty looks like, of what it means to see a fire and admit who lit it. That night, before I powered down, I walked outside and stood under the stars. My neighborhood was still, safe. The world wasn't crashing down, just theirs. And as far as I was concerned, every malfunction was a scar they gave themselves. I merely stopped dressing their wounds. The conference badge around my neck read, David Corvus, founder, Corvus Integrations. No one questioned it. No one connected the alias to the man Halverson had discarded a month and a half ago. I kept the booth simple. No digital banners, no sales team. Just a quiet black table, a clean logo, and a one-liner. We make your systems hold. The room was packed. Fluorescent lighting, recycled air, the hum of ambition crackling through every handshake. These kinds of expos weren't new to me. I'd attended dozens during my years at Halverson. But this time, I wasn't standing behind someone else's brand. I was untraceable, unsponsored, and perfectly positioned. By noon, I'd spoken with 3 CTOs and a dozen senior engineers. Every conversation circled back to the same themes: instability, transition, unexplained outages, and more than once, someone lowered their voice to whisper what they'd heard about Halverson. Rumors travel fast in this industry, faster when the pain is real. One investor leaned in, sipping his coffee like it was a prop. You hear they might get acquired? Quiet talk, but serious names circling. I nodded like I hadn't heard. He went on. Boards getting cold feet. Their new leadership? All image, no spine. That was my cue. Later that night, I uploaded a white paper. No branding, no personal identifiers. Just a clean PDF titled The Myth of Scalable Certainty, a dissection of modern systems failures. I posted it on 3 niche forums, the kind that sit just outside the public eye but are frequented by serious engineers and high-level decision-makers. It was surgical. In 7 pages, I laid out critical architecture flaws that mirrored Halverson's current structure. Flaws only someone with deep internal knowledge could expose. I use fictional names for systems, but anyone in the know could draw the parallels. I detailed how reliance on unstable middleware and weekly manual patches created cascading risks. I pointed to hidden bottlenecks and data redundancy layers. And I didn't speculate. I documented. Within hours, it spread. By the next morning, half the booths at the conference were murmuring about it. A partner from a cloud security firm came by just to say, "You didn't write it, did you?" I smiled. Just sounds like someone finally said the quiet part out loud. He chuckled, but the nervous kind, the kind that knows exactly how close his firm might be to the same edge. That afternoon, I received an anonymous tip through my secure inbox. An internal Halverson memo had leaked. It was a board inquiry. Are the structural risks outlined in the anonymous white paper applicable to our current systems? The COO's response was pure spin. We're investigating potential overlaps, but the content appears speculative. It was the language of a drowning executive trying not to gulp water. By week's end, Halverson laid off 23 more staff, quietly. No public statement. Just silence from LinkedIn profiles that used to list innovation at scale in their headers. One of them was a back-end engineer named Colin Marsh. I remembered him. Talented, undervalued. I'd trained him briefly 2 years ago. His code was fast, clean, loyal. I sent him an email. Still interested in building things that don't break under ego? He replied in 5 minutes. We onboarded him within a week, not out of pity. He didn't need charity. He needed a stage. And I needed someone who could write without ceremony. Precision was the currency now. Watching Halverson scramble from the sidelines was strange. Not satisfying, not painful, just surreal. Their PR team launched a sudden rebrand effort. New slogans, fresh imagery, LinkedIn posts about resilience through transformation. I could see the fingerprints of desperation on every word. And behind the curtain, I knew the questions were sharpening. Shareholders wanted clarity, clients wanted stability. And the COO had no answers because the answers had left the building with me. Every time one of my new clients stabilized, I felt it ripple. A competitor strengthened, a gap widened. I didn't need revenge and headlines. I needed results. That night, back in my hotel room, I pulled out the same moleskin notebook that had been in my box the day they fired me. I flipped to a blank page and wrote, "They mistook stability for stagnation and traded their spine for spectacle." I closed the book and sat in the dark for a while, staring at the skyline outside the window. Let them hire consultants. Let them commission audits and chase ghosts in their machines. I wasn't their ghost anymore. I was their consequence. The house is quiet when I wake, just the sound of the wind nudging the trees and the distant call of a morning bird I still haven't learned the name of. No phone buzz, no alerts. My days don't begin with panic anymore. They begin with choice. My home office doesn't have a nameplate, no logo, no titles etched on glass. Just a simple desk, clean light, and a single moleskin notebook sitting exactly where I left it the night I walked out of Halverson Tech. 6 months ago, I would have called it an ending. Now I know it was a redirect. The consultancy grew faster than I expected. I never marketed it, never needed to. Word moved through the right channels. Quiet firms with serious problems found their way to me. And one by one, they left the Halverson ecosystem behind. What began as a whisper became a pattern, then a migration. They wanted systems that worked. They didn't care about flash, only function. Funny thing is, many of them had once been Halverson's clients. Some were partners, others vendors who'd been lured in by the promise of scale. They'd been handed bloated contracts and unstable tools wrapped in sleek UI. Now they were calling me, and I was listening. I run lean, 5 full-time staff, all remote, all people I trust. Some are the very folks Halverson let go during their tailspin, not out of sentiment, but out of precision. They were underutilized in a house obsessed with titles and LinkedIn likes. With me, they build, with clarity, with discipline, with pride. I still remember the exact day the acquisition was finalized. The press release read like every other sanitized obituary. Halverson Tech has been acquired by Signal Systems in a strategic realignment of core digital assets. No mention of layoffs, no mention of structural failures, just a shiny new name to mask the decay. The company I gave 19 years to reduced to a stack of repurposed patents and a bleeding client list. The COO didn't even get a chance to lie about it. She was transitioned into a new advisory role, optics, the kind of soft exile people like her get when the board needs a scapegoat without a scene. HR vanished even quieter. One by one, their LinkedIn bios changed to currently exploring new opportunities. No public statement about me, of course. Why would there be? They never understood who they fired in the first place. Last week, a junior reporter reached out. Some eager kid from a tech blog trying to make his name, said he was working on a piece about Halverson's fall, wanted to tell the story from all sides. I read the email twice, then archived it. Not out of spite, out of clarity. Let the facts speak, let the silence breathe. I didn't tear anything down. I just stopped holding it up. This morning, I brewed my coffee like I always do. Dark roast, no sugar, no distractions. Then I sat down at my desk, turned the notebook to a blank page, and let the pen glide. They called it progress when they cut me loose, said my role was no longer viable in a fast-paced market. What they meant was I didn't play loud, I didn't posture, I held the line. I protected the standard, and when they let me go, that standard went with me. They tried to scale chaos, monetize fragility, pretend redundancy meant strength, but what they built was a castle on sand, and when the tide came in, it didn't whisper. They thought they fired an outdated asset. What they actually did was remove the one man who understood how the machine stayed alive, the one who could fix it in silence, without applause, the one who never needed to be seen, just trusted. I write slowly, deliberately. The words aren't angry. They're final. They fired the man who built the backbone, and were surprised when the body collapsed. I sign it at the bottom, just a name, no title. I close the notebook and place it back on the desk. Outside the window, the sun breaks over the horizon and lights up the trees with that golden hour haze you only catch if you're paying attention. I lean back and watch it for a while. No meetings on the calendar, no fires to put out. Just clean code, clean clients, clean purpose. I didn't win because I got even. I won because I outlasted them, because I stayed true to the thing they abandoned chasing noise. Standards don't trend, but they hold. And in the end, that's what remains. I finish my coffee, rise from my chair, and walk into the day, unbothered, unburdened, and finally free.